Chapter 2. Let's Go Home. Ju directly crashed into the oncoming pod of mermaids. Gurgle, gurgle. Dense bubbles interspersed between the mermaids. For a moment, Ju could not even distinguish the direction on the water. After a short pause, Ju's dexterous body swam through the gaps. The random swinging of fish tails was unruly. Even though there was water resistance, with a dull thud, Ju's arm trembled. However, he did not have time to be hesitant, and with a slight pause, he continued to swim forward. Noel's hair was still dripping water. He didn't care about taking care of his image. He shot a glance at Fu Yuanchang and then looked towards the pond. He coldly snorted and insinuated in a whisper, "Is the mermaid breeding base short of money recently? How can they let anyone enter?" He saw that Fu Yuanchang turned a deaf ear to his words, as if he did not take notice of this sight. Noel got even more furious, gnashing his teeth, and said ambiguously, "Someone scared the mermaids away as soon as they appeared. When there are any casualties, can that person bear the responsibility?" At this point, Noel suddenly yelled, "Where's the manager? Are you dead? What have you been doing? Get over here!" The person beside him promptly advised him in a whisper, Your Highness, don't be angry. He can't even buy a mermaid, and then his body can still last a few days. Keep your voice down. When he's gone, maybe the mermaids will swim back again." Fu Yuanchang looked indifferent and turned a deaf ear to those words and looked down at the pond in front of him that had become empty due to his existence. His mind was full of the figures of those little mermaids fleeing in a panic upon seeing him. He was silent for a while and turned around, planning to leave. But there was an exclamation at this time. "Oh my God! What's wrong with that mermaid?" Fu Yuanchang paused and looked down, only to see a golden-tailed mermaid going against the pod of mermaids and struggling to swim to him. It was evident that there was only one swimming against the pod of mermaids in the distance. The pod of mermaids was crowded together and in pain. The trajectory of their swimming was erratic, and that mermaid was very weak against the pod of mermaids. Ju was jostled a few times by the pod of mermaids and deviated but quickly adjusted to it. After going past that last few mermaids, Ju did everything he could to swing his tail to swim to the shore. The instant he placed his hand on the shore, Ju heaved a sigh of relief and slowly calmed his breath. He raised his head to look at Fu Yuanchang and opened his mouth, wanting to say something. But the moment he opened his mouth, he felt that he had too much to say. He momentarily didn't know where to begin. Fu Yuanchang was also looking at him. While they made eye contact, the little mermaid's pale golden eyes were full of Fu Yuanchang's shadow. For a while, it seemed silent all around. Ju thought that Fu Yuanchang deserves to be the protagonist of the book. Even if he had a serious illness, he simply looked pale and slightly weak and not ugly at all. On the contrary, it added some sense of fragility. If it was not for that half-hearted ending, Fu Yuanchang should have a bright future. Ju was in his thoughts and did not notice when Fu Yuanchang had crouched down. When he came back to his senses, a hand was suspended before him. His 5 fingers were slender and fair, and also had the faint smell of medicine. Junking-ju, whose actions are always faster than his thinking, reached out to grab Fu Yuan-chuan's finger at once. The fingers subconsciously curled up and touched the corner of his mouth. Junking-ju was startled for a moment. Realizing his nervousness, he gently swung his fishtail and laid directly on Fu Yuan-chuan's palm. Junking-ju's perception of mental energy was not very clear, and not like the other mermaids, who could perceive the aggressive mental energy from a long distance and hurriedly fled in a panic. He was only able to perceive it when he was close. Fu Yuan-chuan's mental energy was very unstable. Although there weren't any ripples on his face, he was always enduring the pain of the turbulence in his sea of consciousness. The corner of Junking-ju's mouth was slightly pursed. He softly pressed his hand against Fu Yuan-chuan's palm, trying to use his spiritual energy to relieve the pain. Fu Yuan-chuan looked at the little mermaid in his palm. He originally thought that this little mermaid approached him due to curiosity, and after approaching he would perceive it and turn around to leave without hesitation. But now the little mermaid was still nestled in his palm, well behaved. The scene of fleeing that he had expected did not happen. The little mermaid took the initiative to hug his hand and kissed his finger. The temperature of the mermaid was obviously very low, but the place where his hand was holding the mermaid felt an indescribable warmth. "That's impossible!" Noel's angry voice broke the tranquil atmosphere. He could tell with a glance that this mermaid was the one who attacked him. However, his eyes were full of disbelief when he saw the mermaid being well behaved and dependent, and said, "Is there something wrong with this mermaid's brain? He actually did not. He actually dared to approach you." The expression of others was also somewhat astonished, and they did not dare to believe the real existence of this scene before their very eyes. What's more, this mermaid slapped Noel moments ago, showing how bad its personality is. But now it was so quiet and docile in Fu Yuan-chuan's hand. This huge change made everyone flabbergasted. Junking-ju sat up and glanced at Noel. He saw he was still standing there, causing trouble when his face was already swollen. If Fu Yuan-chuan wasn't present, he would have swum over no matter what to slap on the other cheek for the sake of symmetry. Fu Yuan-chuan straightened out the golden hair of the little mermaid that had disheveled from colliding with the butt of mermaids. Fingertips brushed against his cheek. Junking-ju was taken aback for a moment, then retracted his gaze back to Fu Yuan-chuan, but saw the man looking at him with undivided attention. When Junking-ju realized it, he was a bit embarrassed and slowly lowered his head to lean on the man's palm. Suddenly, Junking-ju felt a light touch on his body, like he was being pushed. He involuntarily backed away and used his tail to stabilize his body at once. He staggered in the water, turning a circle. When he came back to his sentence, Fu Yuan-chuan already got up and left. He left? Looking at the rear figure of the man gradually getting away, Junking-ju was at a loss for a moment. He propped his hands on the shore, wanting to jump out and chase him. Then he saw Fu Yuan-chuan taking a box for containing mermaids. Junking-ju was then relieved. He watched the man turn around and return to the water at once and waited. The manager followed behind Fu Yuan-chuan. If one takes the box, it signifies that one is definitely going to buy, so the manager would naturally follow along. More importantly, the manager was a little curious. Few people in the base do not know the matter of Fu Yuan-chuan being rejected by mermaids. The mermaids were so afraid of him that when they met him during their meals, they would abandon their half-finished meal to flee. He was empty-handed when he came here several times. There was no little mermaid willing to leave with them. Why did he get the box this time then? The manager followed along and lowered his head to look at the only mermaid left on the shore and said, "Put the box in the water. Only if the mermaid voluntarily enters the box can you take the mermaid away." The manager added, "I have video equipment on me, and if you have any coercive behavior, your qualification of buying a mermaid will be revoked." Fu Yuan-chuan opened the lid and placed the box in the water. When the box was filled with water, it will not sink to the bottom, but float on the surface of the water. This is done in order to prevent mermaids from going in out of curiosity when it sinks to the bottom. As the managers cannot determine whether the mermaid chose the buyer or was simply having fun. The manager looked at Fu Yuan-chuan, who did not even coax a word, and placed the box down. He reminded, "Mermaids are relatively cautious. You have to be more gentle and coax them a lot. Perhaps it might go with you. If you wait like this, the mermaid will not enter." Junking-ju did not wait for the manager to finish speaking. Propped up the edge of the box to try out jumping, and relied on the buoyancy of the water to easily get into the box. The manager, After Junking-ju entered, a lot of water was drained out, leaving just enough to not go past his fishtail. Fu Yuan-chuan picked up the box and asked, "Like this?" That's right," the manager said. "Let's go to the back and I'll explain some taboos for mermaids and the things that need to be attentive of in daily life." Fu Yuan-chuan, "All right." Junking-ju curled up in the box and was held by Fu Yuan-chuan. This box is actually a little small, and he can only lay inside when he curled up his tail. He didn't know how far back the manager had said and how long it would take. He could not see the end of the corridor at a glance. Junking-ju struggled to turn over in the box, strengthened his upper body to lie against the edge of the box so that he could barely stretch his tail. He only bobbed up and down like this, and the water in the box inevitably spilled out. Junking-ju did not notice it at first until he found out that the front portion of Fu Yuan-chuan's clothes seemed to be wet. Fu Yuan-chu, Before he was bathed, he made the other's clothes wet. It won't leave Fu Yuan-chuan an inherent impression that he's very lively and likes to stir up trouble, right? Just thinking about it, Junking-ju felt that the moving box had stopped. He slowly looked up. Fu Yuan-chuan was currently looking down at him. Junking-ju, Was there anything more embarrassing than catching someone red-handed in the act? Junking-ju pursed his lips. He met Fu Yuan-chuan's gaze, slowly straightened his upper body, and got close to that portion of his clothes that was wet. He thought that it was just seawater. "Can I just help to blow it dry for you?" However, as soon as he leaned over, his forehead was grazed by a finger. Junking-ju blinked and looked at Fu Yuan-chuan innocently. "You can't eat it." Junking-ju, Who wants to eat it?" Fu Yuantran looked at the manager and asked, "Do you have anything to eat?" "For the mermaid to eat." "Yes." The manager took out the small snack mermaids love to eat and handed him a bag of dried fish. Fu Yuantran said, "Put it on my tab." "No need. These snacks are prepared for the mermaids." The manager saw that Fu Yuantran's hand was still pressed against the forehead of the little mermaid, and the little mermaid did not even have the intention to avoid or attack him. The manager could not help but to reach out his hand and said, "The color of this mermaid." His voice abruptly stopped and his hand hung in midair. The little mermaid submerged into the water to hide when he approached it. The manager silently retracted his hand. Although the personality of the little mermaid was fickle, under normal circumstances it would not reject the proximity of others. This mermaid had an awkward personality. Fu Yuantran originally wanted to move the box, but he saw the little mermaid hiding and not moving, so he put the dried fish in the water. "Eat it." Junkenju hugged the dried fish and took a bite. He was actually not hungry yet. It's only that he has been eating kelp for the past few days since he had transmigrated, and his mouth did not taste anything else. Although the beys fed them on time, Junkenju had only seen the fish food once. That strange smell almost made him faint from being exposed to it. Ever since then, he didn't go when they were being fed. He has eaten so much kelp that even the smell of dried fish now feels fragrant. Junkenju slowly used his teeth to grind and eat the dried fish. When approached a corner of the room, Junkenju was placed down on the coffee table. The manager took out a few extra thick guidebooks on mermaid rearing, sat on the opposite side, and started to explain it one by one. Junkenju leaned on the box to eat dry fish. From time to time, he shot a glance at Fu Yuantran and watched the man, listening very seriously. When he looked at the manager, talking in good spirits, one book after another. Junkenju's ears hurt from listening. Even the method of making fish food was explained. It was really too detailed. He has never liked such a lengthy discussion, so he simply lowered his head to focus on eating the fish food. A small piece of dried fish is not that big. When he ate the last bite, the manager was still speaking. Junkenju puckered his lips and wanted to surface, but he met a dried fish falling from the top of his head. Junkenju held the dried fish and looked at Fu Yuantran. The man's eyes always fell on the pile of rearing guidebooks before him. His eyes didn't even take a glance in his direction. Yet, there was a tissue being used in his hand to wipe his wet fingertips. Junkenju chuckled silently when he saw it, and a string of bubbles suddenly emerged in the water. He whisked the bubbles away, hugged the dried fish, and sank underwater again. He didn't know how long had passed. Junkenju ate several dried fish again and hugged a new dried foot in his hand, but he didn't eat it. He almost fell asleep inside. The manager put down the materials and said, "All right, that's about it. You can take the mermaid back after payment. If you have any questions, you can consult us anytime. Our light brain is turned on for 24 hours. Junkenju yawned and sat up. At long last, it's done. Fu Yuantran paid an extra sum of money. Pack and sent a set of things that are in common usage for mermaids to this address. The manager nodded his head. All right. After the manager left, Fu Yuantran picked up the box containing the little mermaid. Fu Yuan looked at the pale golden mermaid and did not come to his senses. All of this went too smoothly, too expected, and too unreal. After a long while, Fu Yuan softly said, "We." Jung King-ju straightened up his body and patted the back of Fu Yuan's hand, interrupting his words in high spirit. "Eee! Let's go home!" End of chapter 2.